Now, I want to go to Victoria, where the Labor government under Jacinda Allen is pushing to expand existing vacant residential land taxes to include regional Victoria. In the past, it's just been the inner suburbs and the CBD. Now, under this plan, the new tax would be expanded on homes empty for at least 6 months a year in all of Victoria. So for anyone who's using their property for a holiday rental, which of course is going to be empty for a good period of time, particularly in Victoria in the winter perhaps, this is going to be a big cost and likely to push them to the brink. However, Labor's bill to do all of this is stalled in the upper house. Now, the Greens, as mad as they are, they want to have rent freezes. Now, no one's going to agree to that. The Greens are pushing for impositions on landowners of all sorts of things. But what else could you expect from a state government? Got the highest debt in the country, higher than New South Wales and Queensland combined. They're desperate for money, and their only way out seems to be taxing themselves or taxing us. Joining me now to discuss this is the Shadow Minister for Home Ownership and Housing Affordability, Evan Mulholland. Evan, welcome. I mean, you've gone through the numbers, you've talked to real estate agents, I presume. What's the impact of this going to be on the housing stock of Victoria?
It's going to be very bad, and about 1 in 4 property investors are getting out in Victoria, are fleeing the state or fleeing the market because it's no longer a certain investment. And you've got mum and dad investors that are being treated like a piggy bank for the government to pinch from. These are people on average on about $100,000 a year that have made that choice to invest for their retirement, that have made that investment decision, and the government's coming after them because they're broke.
The tax, I can't quite work out how this is actually going to work. So if I've got a property in Melbourne and then I've got a holiday house, say on the Mornington or the Bellarine Peninsula or down in Gippsland, and I usually rent it out over Christmas, that pays my costs largely, including the increased land tax that Dan Andrews imposed on everyone. How are they going to know whether I'm there or not there and who's in the property and who isn't? I mean, it's impractical to make this work, isn't it?
It's crazy, but they're going to do things like check your water bill.
What?
They're going to do creepy things like that in order to make sure someone's actually living there. But this just drives investment away from Victoria at a time where we can least afford it. We need our system, our state to work for investment. We need investment in our housing supply so we can drive down rental prices and housing prices as well.
Treasurer Palace says that, one of the reasons why he's decided to do this is that if there's vacant land and someone's sitting on it, land banking they call it, then that land should be developed because we need to build more houses. But I mean, we live in a free market, do we not?
And half the time, it's the government itself that is stopping that development, whether it be local councils or state government or government bureaucracies like Melbourne Water holding things up. Another thing they want to do is tax undeveloped land. And when you've got developers with huge properties like built in 5 parts, that all can't be done at the same time because it's uneconomical. And usually the building materials and supplies are being sucked into the government's big build. So they're going to end up being taxed on the last 2 parts.
Like the rest of the country, I mean, Victoria's obviously got a housing crisis. Rental vacancy rates are down at 0.1%. And you've got a whole bunch of taxes that are layered on top of that now, including this land tax. You've got the Airbnb tax. Now you've got this. I mean, I hear investor after investor after investor ringing Talkback Radio and saying, well, my place is on the market. I'm going to go and invest on the central coast of New South Wales or in Queensland, where a mate of mine's got a property in Queensland. He pays no land tax.
Well, that's right, and the evidence backs that up. The Property Investment Professionals of Australia survey found that 1 in 4 investors are getting out in Victoria, and they put the reason down to higher property taxes. When you tax property, that makes it an uncertain investment, and people are clearly going to leave the state because the state's broke. Now, Treasurer Palace botched this from the start. He's adjourned this bill off. It didn't pass. He announced it at a property council breakfast. He announced new taxes. What's he going to do next? To announce a ban on duck hunting at a duck hunting conference?
Didn't even tell the Premier. Please give me confidence, Evan, that they're not going to cave into the Greens. We're not surely going to live in a state where the government says, OK, you own a 2-bedroom apartment in Albert Park, you're not allowed to put the rent up for 2 years.
The Greens' policies are insane. Their policy of a rent freeze for a party that bemoans Donald Trump-style populism, they are the most populist party there is. A rent freeze is supported by no economists. A rent freeze is bad news for all Victorians and will it'll only make the queues outside rental inspections even longer because it doesn't actually help people that are trying to get into the home ownership
they're not going to
market.
cave into the Greens.
Well, they've spoken very strongly against rental freezes, if I can give them an ounce of credit. But this is the thing. The government passes bills all the time with the support of the Greens, so I'm very concerned about that. And the opposition would call on the government in the strongest possible terms to just scrap the bill altogether.
And this is happening at the same time that in large parts of Melbourne's residential areas, the government's knocking down its own housing commission apartments. Where have those people gone?
Well, that's right. Well, that's what they want to do, and we're still waiting. We're still waiting for the detail on that. A lot of people in my electorate, in those commission houses, got consultation notices after the government had already announced. It's just you're seeing the signs of an almost decade-old government. They're tired, they're incompetent, they're corrupt, and they're making life harder for each and every Victorian.
Yeah, it's great to have you in here. Thank you very much. That's Evan Mulholland. Thank you very much for your time, mate.
Cheers.